31st January 2021 will mark the 41st anniversary of one of the worst pogroms of post-independent India. It was bigger than the 1984 and the 2002 riots for the sheer scale of the violence and the number of killings and rapes. On 31st January 1979, the police, under the orders of the CPIM government, opened fire on thousands of Bengali Hindu refugees who had fled persecution in East Pakistan, which then had become Bangladesh. These refugees had settled in an uninhabited island named Morijjhapi in Sundarbans of West Bengal. According to Jyotirmoy Mandal, who knows the horrors of Morijjhapi firsthand, between 14 and 16 May 1979, in one of the worst human rights violations in post-independent India, the West Bengal government forcibly evicted around 10,000 or more from the island. There was rape, murder and poisoning. Bodies were buried in sea. Despite Morijjhapi being only about 75 km from Kolkata, the whitewashing of this brutal incident has been done so meticulously by the communist government that only a very few people in Bengal know about or care to remember, and hardly anyone in India knows about it. But the memory of Morijjhapi massacre has resurfaced in the backdrop of Singur and Nandigram incidents, and few books and papers have also been written about the massacre. In this video, I will tell you the story of Morijjhapi massacre. So let's talk about the background of this horrible massacre. After the partition of India in 1947, lakhs of people fled from the religious, social and economic persecution in West and East Pakistan to India. While the influx of refugees from West Pakistan to North India was mostly over by 1949, the influx of refugees from East Pakistan to West Bengal continued in the 1950s, 60s and 70s. The first wave of refugees that arrived in West Bengal were the upper caste Hindus. They have had a roof over their heads and family and friends to provide them with basic amenities of life in Calcutta. While the lower caste Hindus, or Dalits as they are called, were mostly poor, marginal farmers and people engaged in petty vocations in East Pakistan. They were in the impression that they do not have any reason to leave the country since the social and economic condition of both the Dalits and the Muslims of that area are same, and they can live together with peace and harmony. Moreover, Jogendranath Mandal, an ardent supporter of Dalit Muslim unity, convinced the Dalits to stay in newly created East Pakistan. However, Mandal himself left Pakistan in 1950 because of the anti-Hindu bias of the Pakistani government. But the poor, lower caste people stayed there until 1971, when Pakistani army carried out the genocide of Hindus. The pogrom by Pakistani army forced the lower caste Hindus to move to India. In an academic paper, Ishita De writes, "It was reported by the Minister of Supply and Rehabilitation, Sri Ram Nivas Murdha, in a Lok Sabha debate in 1976 that 52.31 lakh persons migrated from East Bengal to India from 1948 to 1971. Initially, the Bengali Hindu refugees started settling down in West Bengal, Assam and Tripura. But soon the government of these states felt the administrative and economic burden of these settlers, and the union government decided to settle them in Dandakaranya, comprising parts of what are today independent states of Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. The central government set up the Dandakaranya Development Authority, that is DDA, to develop this mostly arid region. The state and central governments knew that a resettlement in Dandakaranya was not at all conducive to the welfare of Bengali refugees. Yet, they went for a forceful relocation without any plan or infrastructure. Once in Dandakaranya, a harsh nature and an unfamiliar way of life greeted the refugee families. The conditions of the non-arable land were harsh its soil gravelly and arid. The DDA planned to give the refugees few plots of land for setting up their houses and for farming. But the refugees used to farming in the fertile alluvial Gangetic Delta felt it would be impossible to grow crops in Dandakaranya. They were also very unhappy with the living conditions in Dandakaranya, where they were put up in tents erected in guarded enclosures. When the refugees were being forcefully sent to different camps in Dandakaranya, the Communist Party was in opposition in West Bengal. They demanded that the refugees be absorbed within Bengal itself. Jyoti Basu, who was then the leader of opposition in West Bengal, himself had given speeches advocating the West Bengal government to do the same. Many left leaders, most notably Ram Chatterjee, visited the refugees in Dandakaranya and assured them that they would be back in Bengal when the left front came to power. The refugees naturally thought that the left was their ally. In June 1977, the left front came to power, but surprisingly, no one from the government seemed interested in following up on their promises, which was made earlier to rehabilitate the refugees in West Bengal. In a paper dwelling on Morid Jhapi when tigers became citizens, refugees, tiger food, Anuj Ales writes, in 1977, when the left front came to power, they found their refugee supporters had taken at their word and sold their belongings and land to return to West Bengal. In all, 150,000 refugees arrived from Dandakaranya, expecting the government to honor its word. Fearing that an influx of refugees might jeopardize the prospects of state's economic recovery, the government started to forcibly send them back. So, after using the cause of the refugees settled at Dandakaranya to gain sympathy and support of already settled East Pakistani Hindus in Bengal, the communists took a complete U-turn on their promises and said that it will not be feasible to allow the refugees to settle in Sundarbans or any other part of West Bengal, and that they will have to go back to Dandakaranya. As soon as they reached Bengal, the police forced them down from trains and made arrangements for sending them back to Dandakaranya, though the attempt was not wholly successful. Thousands of men, women and children reached Morid Jhapi Island in April 1978. They cleared the forests, built embankments to protect the island from high tides, dug ponds for storing rainwater and for fisheries, and dividing small plots of land among themselves to build their small huts. As word spread around, thousands of refugees started streaming into Morid Jhapi. By June 1978, about 30,000 refugees had settled down in the large island, built nearly 250-kilometer long embankments, set up a beedi making unit, a carpentry workshop, a bakery, a hosiery unit, a secondary school, and a cooperative for farming and fishing. The state government could not tolerate such settlements and proclaimed that the refugees were in unauthorized occupation of Morid Jhapi, which is a part of the Sundarbans Government Reserve Forest, thereby violating Forest Act. Then on 26 January 1979, the West Bengal government started an economic blockade of the settlement with 30 police launches. The settlers were tear gassed, huts were razed, and fisheries and tube wells were destroyed to deprive refugees of food and water. Niranjan Haldar, a veteran journalist, in his interview to Deep Haldar, said, after economic restrictions on Morid Jhapi settlers in January 1979, many of them died of starvation. Those who wanted to extend relief to these refugees were asked to leave by the government. They were prevented from carrying out relief work. Children were worst affected. Their bodies were thrown in the river. Fishermen caught bodies in nets instead of fish. On On 31st January, few women rowed out from Morijhapi to the nearby island for food and drinking water. They thought that the police which had encircled Morijhapi will at least not fire on them, but they were completely wrong. At first, they were asked to return, but when the women refused, the police forcefully hit their mechanized boats with the women's boats. The women jumped into the water and swam away. The cops even fired into the water and killed 2 of them. The rest were found a few days later in a forest in another island, and all said they had been repeatedly raped by cops and communist cadres. The islanders who were watching their women drowning got infuriated and started brandishing lathis, choppers, and whatever they could lay their hands on. This gave the signal to the police and the CPM workers to enter Morijhapi and fire at, molest, rape, and kill islanders. They did not even spare kids. According to a survivor's account, about 15 children were killed who had taken shelter in their school. The kids had gathered there to make arrangements for Saraswati Puja to be celebrated the next day, that is on 1st February. Though figures vary, it is widely believed that at least 1700 people, including many women, children, and the elderly, were killed on 31st January 1979 at Morijhapi. Many others were injured. The survivors fled to other parts of the state, and many are now settled in the North and South 24 Parganas districts of Bengal, eking out their lives in utter misery and penury. Between 14 and 16 May 1979, the settlers were driven out by the police. Their huts were set on fire. Nobody knows how many survived the carnage. Those who survived were then forcefully sent back to Dandakaranya, and some of them were sent to the Andamans. On 17 May 1979, Buddhadev Bhattacharya, the then Minister of Information and who later on became the Chief Minister of West Bengal, declared that Morijhapi had been cleared of refugees, as if it was some kind of achievement for them. Now, as far as the cause of this brutal massacre is concerned, there is no agreement among the researchers and authors who have written on the topic. But here I would like to quote from the book Blood Island, an oral history of Morijhapi massacre written by Deep Halder. In page 21 of this book, the author writes, "Why did the Jyoti Basu government forcibly evict Morijhapi settlers? The official reason is that Morijhapi is a protected island and the refugees were destroying the ecology by cutting trees. There are, however, allegations against the government of caste bias, as the refugees were mostly Dalits. Some say this is an example of how Bengal's Bhadralok Marxists, who talk about a classless, casteless society in seminar halls and political speeches, display their inner caste prejudices. Others say the left front government thought these settlers would vote against them, as they had gone back on their word of bringing them back to West Bengal. But nothing justifies the horrors unleashed on Morijhapi's settlers."